Welcome to Real Estate Therapy, where you'll find unusual advice for home buyers, sellers, and the agents who love them. I'm your host, Cynthia Cummins. Join me, won't you? Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Real Estate Therapy. I truly am excited. Every podcaster says they're excited, but I really am excited to have Ben Brady with me today. And I want him to introduce himself. I want you to introduce yourself, but first I want to say a quick little story. Ben is from Australia, and they do things a little bit differently down under. And I was on a vacation in New Zealand a few years ago. And, like usual, I decided to check out some real estate. And I went into the houses, and everybody had a flyer that said, "This is the date for the auction. We're going to auction this house." And I thought, now that is just completely backward, dumb way to do it. Why are they doing this? It doesn't make any sense. It made absolutely no sense to me. Then, fast forward a few years, I was introduced to you and to Harcourts Auctions. I had a client who could benefit from that modality. I was so impressed with you and your team. My clients hired Harcourts to do the auction. The result was amazing. It completely changed my opinion of what that could be. And what I also realized was at that time, what we tried to do in San Francisco, at least, was to conduct a sort of auction ourselves without calling it that and without anywhere near the comfort of the transparency that's built into the auction process, that the way Harcourts does it. Anyway, so now I'm a big fan, and as you know, I've tried to work with you as much as I can in helping my clients get their properties sold. So
Yeah.
now you take it away. Tell us about yourself now that I've told
Well,
my story.
well, I think that the first thing that I'd say is that Cynthia, you were the one of the auction pioneers for us that gave us an opportunity in the early days of doing auctions in San Francisco. So first of all, thank you to you and your team. It was
Yay!
it was the thing that I got to do, which I had the benefit of doing, is I worked with you on your first auction, which was awesome because the part was, I remember it was Divisadero, wasn't it, our first one together?
Yep.
Yeah,
Hmm.
Divisadero was, yeah. I still tell people a great deal about that because the Marina District is still one of the few areas. Like, I have a few areas within North America that I want to own property,
Hmm.
and we bought a property in the West Village in Manhattan, and I definitely want something in the Marina, and I want
Hmm.
something like Divisadero where we could do it up and and have that full property within the Marina District. It's still a great story that I tell people a lot about, but as far as introduction, I'm the CEO of Harcourts Auctions. I'm the founder of it as well for North America. We came over here about, we'll call it 10 years ago now, and into Southern California originally. And we built a philosophy around non-distressed auctions. And when we say non-distressed auctions, equity auctions, whatever you want to call them, it's not courthouse steps. We're taking regular real estate transactions or regular real estate to auction, and creating what we believe to be transparency, first of all, to the real estate transaction. And then the second of all is, I think that the auction process is something where it gives a defined date of having a seller see the marketplace, and then also have a buyer make a decision. And if there isn't a result at that period of time, it allows everybody to reflect. It allows everybody to go, okay, well, is my home actually worth this? Or a buyer say, well, do I really want this property? And it just gets decisions made so that not only can buyer and seller move forward, the realtor can make sure that they're not putting a bad investment of their time into something that's not going to come off.
Right.
But that's it's kind of a long-winded preface of that. We do auctions.
Well, I definitely want to talk about auctions, and maybe we'll start with that. I
Sure.
mean, it's funny because um, the nature of the market in San Francisco for many years was such that all you had to do was list something for sale, and there would be 18 people lined up trying to buy it, trying to add extra money. I my joke was that it was a beauty contest, and buyers would just show up basically naked with a basket of money on their head, right? Saying, "Here, take my money, please." And we've had a shift in the market in the last year where um, that urgency has gone away.
Mm.
And so both real estate agents and the buying public and the selling public are all there's this phenomenon where a buyer will come in to see a property and they'll be all excited. Wow, I love those windows. I love the bathroom. I can picture my toddler playing in the garden. And then you don't hear from them ever.
Mm.
Weeks go by. So all the urgency is drained away.
Mm.
And so we're in this kind of limbo land, whereas that doesn't happen with an auction. Or if it does, there's a very clear message about what's going on.
Very clear
There's
message, and very clear message indeed. You know, it's interesting. People think that auction is only for something that isn't selling relatively quickly. And Cynthia, you know the real truth in this. But for those listening, I think that the reality is that even though, let's say that, like, the thing that I found interesting in the San Francisco market when we first came in there is that agents, it was an interesting thing because, like, agents most of the time get offended when we ask them, hey, can we help you with an auction, if we don't know them or we meet them for the first time,
right.
because
They're
they're like,
like, oh,
I
how
don't
could
need
you?
that. Yeah.
Right.
and
How
and
dare
and the
you?
real exactly, they're like, oh no, we've got multiple offers. It's like, no, but I realize that, but realistically, we could still help you with your multiple offers. I'll give a prime example of this is that we had a property in the Marina District that wasn't your one. It was actually another condo that we had. It was a two-bedroom, one bathroom. Okay, and it was on the second floor, as on a walk up, and property got listed in that building on the second floor. Same property that we were going to be doing an auction on. Same building that we were going to be doing an auction in, and the property sold for $980,000. It sold in 7 days with an offer date, and it sold for they had it at 800,000. It sold for $980,000. So
Which was a
if you
great result.
well, from a blind eye, you look at that and you're like, that is exquisite. Wow,
Right.
awesome.
I think I know where
However,
you're going.
then we took a property to auction, same building, same floor plan, just a different side of the building, right? In the same condition, right? 2 weeks after that property hadn't even closed yet. Okay. And we ended up selling it for 1,065,500. But 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 the funny part about that is, though, is that one, we didn't even know what the other one had sold for, but two is that we got double the volume of offers on the property prior to the auction, because often people think that, oh, do I have to bid at the auction? No, you can still put an offer in prior to auction, and we won't go down that rabbit hole. But the the thing about it is that the other agent that was representing the other property was offended, like that, oh, we didn't, like, we got a better price, and she thought that we were doing it on purpose. And I have to say this to agents is that I get it. You don't know what you don't know, because Cynthia, you know about auction, you know how it works, whereas I'd go as far as to say at least 75% of the agents in San Francisco or the Bay Area have no idea who we are, no idea of auction, because they don't want to know as well, a lot of them. And they don't know what they don't know. And they think they got, like, this lady thought she got a tremendous result for her sellers. And yeah, sure, $180,000 over list price. That looks like a good result, but it wasn't, because
Right.
there's no guarantee that you're getting the most out of the market, because the transparency that auction creates, it's like a multiple offer situation, but you can see what the others have paid.
Right.
Okay. So therefore you have a chance to bid more. Anyway, I can go on and on and on.
We know
That's
exactly what you're saying, though. And that's an interesting thing that it's transparent so the buyer can see exactly what somebody else has paid.
yeah.
Now, there's listing agents in San Francisco who would say, we don't want the buyers to see what each other has paid
Yeah.
because what we're hoping for this is that somebody, and this is a typical scenario, is you'll have multiple offers, everybody will be clustered together, and then there will be one outlier. So you're looking for the one outlier who decides to go way out there, right?
Yeah.
So maybe if you have more transparency, that doesn't happen as often.
Yeah,
But
but that's yes. There you go.
but
I'll let you finish.
what instead happens is everybody works their way up to that anyway because they're competing with each other and they're seeing what the other people are offering, and there's a lot of reassurance in seeing that you aren't the outlier, that you aren't out there alone,
Oh yeah,
right?
yeah, 100%. And just to finish that point is that that's why we have the pre-auction phase as well, Cynthia. Like we have that opportunity because don't get me wrong, we've had several situations where we've sold a property before the auction date because somebody's put in an offer to stop the auction where they are $150,000 above everyone else. So the seller says absolutely, and our recommendation is absolutely because a live auction won't help provoke that further up. Okay,
Right, right.
and ultimately it allows us to accept it prior to auction and move on. But if we have within a certain percentage and in a cluster, as you mentioned, just like what we had on Divisadero, that ended up going well above. I would go as far as to say $150,000 above what anyone even told us because they were all sitting around 2.5 ish, and they end
Yeah,
up going to 2.7 ish. Okay, and to use round numbers, like at the end of the day, nobody actually was giving us their true cards
exactly.
beforehand. Yeah. Anyway,
Exactly. And this is, I think this is a fun thing to share that a lot of people don't know. But when I am representing buyers and we're going after a hot property, and we do all of our homework, we do everything to get it right, the right terms, the right price, and we're usually stretching, we're going for it. I get the news that we won. So I call my buyers to say, guess what? Usually I try to act like, well, wanted to let you know that they got 14 offers and you won, right? That's how I like to do it. And so there will be this moment of, oh, yay, we won. And then they think, oh, shit, we paid too much money.
that is so true. That is just so true. And if I can use a quick story to give you a better example of that, not a better, another,
Another.
okay, is my mum and dad were a prime example of this. I still remember this. But like, so when I came to the US, is that mum and dad were selling the family home. Thank God I just left. Like, I just don't want to deal with that. Like, I had a buddy take care of it, and it was just thank God I was on the other side of the world. But my family aren't in real estate, and I guarantee you that if you sat at a dining room table, like don't get me wrong, I'd like to think that I'm pretty good at real estate and I understand what I'm doing. If I sat there, in their opinion, I've got no idea what I'm talking about. You know,
Of
they would
course.
never
Yeah.
like. Of course, it just is what it is. But the funny part is that my dad was trying to buy another home after he sold the family home. Now they auctioned the property, they got a decent result for it, and dad was buying another property. And through that experience, the market was moving pretty well. And dad called me. I remember it was really early. Sorry, it was really late at night because it was actually because that's how it works. They're a day ahead and whatever. And dad called me. It was late at night. I'm like, hey, everything okay? And he's like, yeah, I'm sitting in a real estate office. I'm like, oh, okay. He's like, yeah, and this guy that I'm looking at right here is telling me that I need to increase my offer because there's another offer on the property if I want it. And I'm like, okay. And he's like, he won't tell me what the other offer is. I'm like, yeah, dad, that's how traditional real estate works. It's not an auction, obviously. He's like, no, it's just but he won't tell me what the other one is. So what do I know what to pay to beat the other offer? I'm like, he can't tell you. He's like, well, no wonder all of you guys are scumbag real estate agents. I'm like,
Oh.
okay, well, hey, okay, just don't. I said, Dad, just don't offer on the property. Well, no, I'm going to put an offer in, but if I don't win, then whatever. Anyway, Dad was a bit upset about it. He called me after. He's, oh, well, I didn't win. I'm like, that's because you're a cheapskate. But anyway, we'll talk about that later. Okay, and he's like, oh, well, what a silly process. Like trying to get me to make a bigger offer, but he won't tell me what the other offer is, so I can decide what it is. I'm like, okay, Dad, see you later. Goodbye. About a week later, mum and dad call me. Mum calls me, and they're in the car together, and I'm on loudspeaker, and they're like, "Oh, do you know this auctioneer, Jason Andrew?" I'm like, "Oh yeah, I do know Jason." And they're like, "Oh yeah, went up and said hello, and he said he knew you." And I'm like, "Oh yeah, great. Did you go to an auction?" They're like, "Yeah, yeah." Dad, did you bid on it? He's like, oh yeah, I was a registered bidder, but like dad's really happy and jovial. He's like, oh, but the guy who won the bid paid way too much money. I'd never pay that much money for it. Blah 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 blah. I'm like, oh, okay, cool. He was really happy. I was, yeah, well, you know what? Yeah, it was. I just wasn't going to pay that much money. I'm like, cool. Well, okay, cool. Well, good luck on the next one. Anyway, what I'm trying to depict here, multiple offer situation, put your highest and best foot in. Well, what's the other offers? I can't tell you what the other offers is. Well, that's kind of not transparent at all. And well, what do I come in at? And am I going to overextend myself? And is that right or is it wrong? And all the reasons. And then an auction, dad lost out on the auction. He was okay with it because he had an opportunity. First time, second, third chance. Is there anyone else that wants to bid anymore? He had a chance to bid more and he knew what the other number was. He felt very comfortable with that, Cynthia, because he
Right.
had an opportunity. But where
Right.
I'm going, and I want to stem back to the traditional real estate process, if I'm an agent representing that client, okay, and they miss out, and then they see the property close, and it's a price that they probably would have went to, but just weren't given an opportunity, the agent wears the brunt of that. Okay, if you win the bid, and then for some reason they hear about, I don't know, rumor or whatever it is, that they were so much higher than everyone else, and they paid too much, you wear the brunt of that being the agent. It's one of those things where transparency helps everybody.
Absolutely. I mean, I have been in the situation where on the listing end, representing sellers, I mean, I had one client, we were going over the offer results, and um, I announced the number of the highest offer, and he sort of had this sharp intake of breath and then put his head in his hands and laid his head on the table. Couldn't understand. And he was crying because
Oh,
the number was so high. He was overwhelmed with the emotion of that. And but what was going on for me at the same time, I was thrilled for my clients and I was happy that I'd gotten this great result. Uh, if you could attribute it to my efforts. Um, but part of me wanted to issue a counteroffer for less money, right? Like it felt, it feels a little bit wrong when somebody
mm,
steps out too far. But but that's not my job. My job is I have a fiduciary obligation to my clients to get the very best result for them.
mm.
So of course I'm not going to issue a counteroffer for less money, right? Not. And that's also one reason I'm not a dual agent. I don't represent both sides because how can you be fair in
Yeah,
that situation? Um,
indeed.
that that thing about dual agency made me think of something. I mean, sort of what I wanted to talk to you about today are these things that, and I hope that you're going to come back and we're going to have another conversation about these things that aren't obvious to some of them aren't obvious to the layperson. Some of them aren't obvious to the real estate agent, right? Like my joke is always that I don't really sell houses. Now, I think that's true. The house kind of sells itself, right? There's nothing, and when I do have a listing that I'm selling, there's almost nothing I can do or say to help someone want to buy that house. They're either
Mm,
going to, if I present it well, if I market it correctly, fine. They will come,
yeah.
build it, and they will come. But I can't say, oh, but don't you love the bathroom? Isn't this bathroom better than the other bathrooms you've seen? Don't you think you want it because of that? Whatever. Um, but so we had a little conversation before we started recording about some things that maybe people don't know, that nobody quite knows, or that are fun to talk about
Mm,
since we're in the business. And one of those was that we, as real estate agents, well, the first question anybody asks us when they have us over to look at their house is, what's my house worth? Now, whether they come out with that or not, that is the first question in their mind. Whenever I share a CMA listing presentation digitally, people can go back in and look at. Give the presentation, and then I can see what they click on later.
Yeah.
The first thing they click on is either the CMA, the market analysis, or the um, the estimated expenses.
Yeah.
They're looking at one of those two sheets, so it's all about the money.
Yeah.
But the truth of the matter is, we might have an idea, but we don't know what any property is really worth.
You said it well. That's exactly right. I couldn't agree with you. I couldn't agree with you anymore. Like we did an episode, Cynthia, like on our podcast where it was what goes unsaid, and
Uh-huh.
it's kind of like for example, it's a situation when I had real estate offices back in Australia, and training new people. I had an agent walk in the door, and he's like, "Oh yeah, did a great listing presentation. I'm definitely going to get that business." And I'm like, "Oh great, did you sign it?" Like, no. Like, okay, well, we'll see. And he missed out on the business, and he missed out on the business the day after. Like, he walked in and like someone had, hit his dog with a car, and he's like, oh god. And you're like, everything okay? And he's like, oh, I missed out on that listing. I'm like, really? Well, why'd you miss out? Oh, they went with a discount brokerage, or someone that was going to do less fee. I'm like, really? Well, let's sit down and let's run through your scripts. How you handle it. He's like, well, they didn't ask. They didn't even give me a chance to defend myself. And that was a moment with me where it clicked. It's like you need to kind of provoke individual situations in order to get a better understanding of what's going to happen. And that's why covering most basis of when you're in a presentation, and hiding out in the open, Cynthia. And that's kind of like what like the topic that we were going to talk about is hiding out in the open. I believe that you need to talk about your fee. You need to be upfront. Don't let sleeping dogs lie, so to speak. Poke the bear. Okay. You need to be, well, guys, I'm here to obviously tell you what your property's worth. Is that what you want? Well, yeah, yeah, yes. Okay, thank you. You've brought it up. Um, it's like this question that I ask in a listing presentation or that I train on, and you can see people really diffuse. So, for example, at the beginning of a listing presentation, I'll ask a couple of questions. I'm like, how would you be choosing your real estate agent? Okay, what do you want to achieve out of today's meeting? Okay, and then the final question is, how would you like me to close you today? And they're
I
like,
love that. I
they're like,
love
what do you,
that.
what do you mean close? Well, Mr. and Mrs. Seller, um, I've always found that at the end of a presentation, if you don't have an understanding of how you would like to leave the presentation at the very beginning, it creates this awkward tension. Okay. Throughout this entire presentation, you're thinking in the back of your mind, oh my God, here we go. He's going to ask us to sign a contract or whatever it is. So I want to get it out of the way up front. How do you want to close off the meeting today? Okay. And I say it, how do you want to close me today to get a reaction, obviously, but how do you want to end the meeting out? Do you want to sleep on it? Do you want to make a decision today? How do you want to do it? Well, we want to sleep on it. Great. Well, I'm very comfortable with that because if I'm the best agent today, I should be tomorrow also. Okay. If you've got time to think about it even further. So
Right.
I don't want to pressure you to make a decision. And you just see this, like this unequivocal just slouch and this, oh, yes, thank God I don't have to deal with this realtor that's going to be pressuring me to make a decision. But but then there's the other way. People are like, oh, I don't pressure anybody. I'm not going to ask them anything. And it's sort of like, then you don't come across as a true professional that is going to defend them and actually fight for them. So there's a happy medium there.
Hey there, it's Cynthia. If you're enjoying this, please help a girl out and be sure to like, follow, comment, review, or share on whatever platform you're using to view or listen. Please do just one of those things and visit our website, realestatetherapy.org, for more information or to pose a question or suggest a topic for a future episode. Thanks. Right. I mean, the language that you're using there. How are we going to should I close you today?
Yeah.
Um, there's action behind that. There's because we're not we're I mean, some people think this, but I'm not going over there just to have a little chat and some tea. I'm not there to admire their art or the new paint color in the kitchen. That's not why I'm there. Um, though I do tend to lean into this kind of friendly, motherly, persona, which is real. That's who I am. I care deeply. I
You
do.
make people feel very comfortable. I've seen it firsthand. You make people feel incredibly comfortable.
That's good, but maybe a little too comfortable, where they say,
Maybe.
we love you, but we're listing it with our best friend, because she just got her license, right? And ooh, ouch,
Mhm.
that's happened.
Yeah.
Um, but that you mentioned closing, that there is a reason you're there, and I. When people ask, what is it going to sell for, what's the price, I think that what they don't understand is that your the price is going to be whatever it is going to be, depending on the market conditions, depending on the buyers, depending on how you present it, all of those things. But you're choosing your agent because you want somebody who's a professional to represent you, to be
Yeah.
your ally in this conversation about how to best sell your property and get it sold. They are not, they're not buying it. They don't know the price. And this doesn't even have to be decided right away. This is
Yeah.
something that's an ongoing conversation. So what you're looking for is not an authority on value, right? But someone who can be your ally and your fellow strategist. Uh,
I
in
and I think that that's ally and fellow strategist. I really do believe that there's this whole persona, like you said, is that you don't believe that you sell anything. Like we don't sell anything. We can't force somebody to make decisions. It's just about it's like the price. Like it really bothers me, Cynthia. Like to the point that people either love me or they hate me. They like I don't have any middle fans.
oh,
Okay,
nobody hates you.
please, but it's because of the nature of what I and the real estate community either really enjoy the way that I communicate about real estate or they don't. And part of that reason is that I have an unequivocal belief that nobody knows what anything is worth. Like I think it's just because of one, we run a process being auction where it actually really tests the marketplace and the marketplace speaks with its own words to tell you what a property is worth. I just don't I see this fault in the real estate business. And I want you to speak to it as well, because you'll put this in a more appropriate language. You'll also put this in a more probably polite manner. But realistically, the thing if I'm lying down on your couch and we're really doing real estate therapy here, and I'm going to tell you the one thing that really really I hate about our industry
Oh,
is
I'm
that
all ears here.
is I hate people saying that they think they have any opinion of what a property is worth. Like it really bothers me. Like it bothers me when people's opinion that aren't willing to write a check give opinions. It
Right,
really bothers me when somebody presents facts that don't have any bearing on what a property is going to sell for. Like I really dislike comps. I really don't like that because it's based down to a particular property at a particular time for a particular situation for that particular person looking and the particular person selling at that particular time yet again. And you can just do this loop of these particulars that you can't replicate
right,
regardless of whether they're the exact same property or they're not. You can't replicate the situation because no two people are the same and no two moments are the exact same. And trying to predict it just falsifies our positions. It creates disappointment. It creates problems where I see people. You've got to remember, a lot of agents don't use auction until the situation is too late. So I come in and I'm a fixer, and I'm
right,
only and I'm only a fixer to a certain extent. I don't do real estate by magic. When an agent has allowed a seller to price a property at a ridiculous price and it's left on the market for way too long, and they do minimal price reductions or they don't do any at all, the reputation that property is tarnished. Forget whether it's in a bad location or it has defects. It's just a bad property at that point because the price has been allowed to go on there. And 90% of the time, I'm not going to say 99, it's 90% of the time, the problem has been that the agent has been too weak in the moment to not say to them, hey, I really don't know. So why don't we try a different method of sale where we can find out what the market is going to say? Or, hey, if we put it at this price, it's going to sit and we need to readdress the price really quickly. Like Zillow came out with a study a little while ago that a property loses traction after 7 days on the market, and then you do a price reduction and it only maintains a little bit of traction for 3 days. So if you were looking for true reflection on efficiency in a market, you should price the property. If it hasn't sold in 7 days, do a price reduction. If it hasn't sold in the next 3 days, do another price reduction. And then all of a sudden, though, with those price reductions, there's poor reputation. I honestly believe, Cynthia, that the real estate transaction is so inefficient. I
Oh
truly
yeah.
believe that. And the unfortunate part about this is that I'd have a great deal of agents that would disagree with me on that, and they would call me, argumentative. They would call me cynical about real estate, but it's because they don't know anything different.
Right.
Sorry, there's my rant over.
Oh well, you. I like it when you rant. Um, and I've loved watching you in action, advising our mutual clients about, the situation, about, here we are, Mr. and Mrs. Seller. Here we are. We've got an offer in front of us. What are you going to do?
Yeah.
And you're so good at laying that out in a way that, here's what I like. Somebody asked me, one of the auctions we did, they said, why would I really want to do this? Like, why would I want to do this? And what I, based on my conversations with them, it was pretty clear that they wanted to sell the property. Then there was probably some number where if they didn't get it, they weren't going to go forward, but they wanted to give it their best shot. And I said, if you really want to know what your place is worth with an eye to selling it, do it as an auction,
Mhm.
because we will leave no stone unturned. Every possible buyer will see it. It'll be the best environment for getting the most money, and you'll know exactly where you stand.
Yeah.
You won't ask, gosh, should she have done more open houses, right? Should we have? I mean, when you get to that point, people start. Let's say you're in San Francisco, you're 30 days out. Now it's feeling really dire because
Mm.
that's a long days on market for anything in San
Yeah.
Francisco, even now.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, and that's when people start saying, well, maybe you should have mentioned that the washer and dryer was in the, had a shelving system above it, or
So true. So
right.
true.
And I'm like, I'm sorry that that beautiful, those IKEA shelves you got in the laundry room are not going to make a difference here. It's, you know,
It's
it
amazing to
doesn't.
see the grasping of straws of different things. Like, oh well, but you didn't say that, a grass is like some type of grass. So you're like, oh dear, here we go. And it's
Right.
and again, like that's the part of this is that you've got to understand. I think that Cynthia, you and I spoke about on our podcast episode when we first did our first one together. We spoke about understanding the emotions that somebody's going through, and actually having the ability to say to them is that, hey guys, you're just going through the processes of denial. Happy for you
Mhm.
for us to go through those together.
Right.
um, but realistically that's not going to change things. I'm
Right.
sorry, it just won't.
Yeah.
But it's also sometimes also with particular clients, you've got to buy into their process of elimination and their journey that they have to go through.
Hmm.
um, and and sometimes you've got a client where I won't take it to auction. Like, let's say that you had a brand new listing, right? Hadn't been in the marketplace before, and you called me and you said, Ben, I want to take this to auction. No problem. And like, we'll do a listing presentation and we'll talk about auction. They're like, oh yeah, this sounds good. Yeah, okay. But we still really want our price. And there was a bit of hesitation. My knee-jerk reaction is that, hey, Cynthia, I think they need to go to marketplace traditionally first
Hmm.
and see that their price is not out there, so that therefore we don't give them another layer of deniability. And what I mean by that is that people go through these certain stages in a real estate transaction. They see, first of all, it's, oh, I love my agent. I love this. We're going to move. It's going to be great. And that's the first week. Second week is that, okay, all right, things are okay. Things are moving. All right, okay, we're in the flow. We get it. Okay. Third week, it's like, okay, I'm ready to sell now. Where is everyone? Um, I'm looking for, like, let's go. Fourth
Right.
week, it's okay. I've got the wrong agent. This is not working for me. Why haven't I sold? Fifth week, it's you are the worst person in the world. Sixth week is that at this point, they're probably going to start blaming, different market conditions and whatever it is. They look in the mirror most of the time last. Now, don't get me wrong. Sometimes we have some sellers that are very self-reflecting and they say that they listen to the marketplace and all those type of stuff. That's no problem at all. But, it's a journey of this process of elimination for them. And sometimes we've got to fast track that for them. We've got to
Right.
take them through those steps earlier. That's why I love to encourage a low offer in the very beginning, so that
Right.
therefore they see it, they get a really big knee jerk. Oh no, we're not going to take that. No way. And they see that, hey, this isn't possible. I think our job, like, again, I said this to you as another topic that we could talk about, is like, it's managing greed, which we can get into later. But I think our primary job is not selling real estate, as you've already said. I think it's making sure our clients are in a position to see the market when it actually turns up. We're not responsible for making the marketplace turn up, because it will on its own if we do the right things, but we are responsible for making sure that our clients can see it clearly when it does turn up. And what
Yeah.
I mean by that is like my final rant on this before I hand you back the microphone. I'm sorry I'm hijacking this, but the the funny part about this is that, let's say that real estate changed, right? And let's say that a seller gets an offer. Let's say they want $1 million. And that's usually probably it's a little high, and you're like, oh, okay, maybe. If 950 turned up, you probably should accept that, right? Let's say that we get an offer for $940,000 in the first 2 weeks of it being on the market, and they say no, it's just not enough. The buyer goes away, they go buy something else, and then you can't replicate that situation again, and they end up selling it for $900,000 because they didn't see the marketplace clearly in that 2 weeks. It's because you both were in the honeymoon phase with each other.
Right.
And I believe that real estate should work in a sense that, let's say that they said no to the 940 and then you sell it for 900. I think the realtor should be liable for that $40,000 because they didn't educate the seller enough on the marketplace quick enough. They
Hmm.
didn't take them through the processes of elimination. And imagine if real estate did that all of a sudden, Cynthia, and the industry changed, there wouldn't be many people left.
Right. Yeah. Well, that's that's extreme.
Hmm.
Got an extra 40,000 lying around.
Yeah.
Um, no, it's true. I mean, that's one reason I think education and context is everything. And a big part of our job is to educate people about what the market has to offer and how does their property, how does it fit into that landscape, literally. And then, like with buyers, helping them understand what's on offer.
Mm.
What does a two-bedroom buy look like for 950? What is that? Would you live there? Um, or would you decide that now is a good time to move to Raleigh, North Carolina, which seems to be
Yeah.
where everybody's going right now? Raleigh, North Carolina. But I think it's that we're there to help people get out of their own way, not listen too much to what is coming in one ear or the other from friends, the neighbor who just sold down the block, the in-laws back in um, Des Moines, right? They've got to, or some book that they read, because
Yep.
everything is hyper time sensitive, hyper local. It changes minute to minute. And that's why we can't know. We don't know. I don't know. And yet I so want to know, and I want to act like I'm smart and I know what I'm doing. Now, I wanted to talk about greed and some other things. So you have to promise me that you'll come back.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Again, I think that the thing that I benefit out of the conversation with yourself, and the reason that I'm a big fan of you doing your own podcast, is that I think that there's some crucial thought process that you give a transaction that other people don't. They simply think we sell homes. They say that our job is not very complicated. They say our job is not hard, and all of these different things. And I think the industry is in a direction of that. This is easy. You can do this many transactions. Just go for it. You can do 100 transactions. Go for it. Just stop making excuses. Go for it. It's like grit culture, which people have proven doesn't work. And there's this thing in the industry, Cynthia, that I believe that people are trying to get further away from the deal and further away from the clients, and uh, just they're trying to become transactional in volume more than they
Right.
are trying to get closer to the transaction, closer to the client, closer to all of those things. And I think that what you're talking about on and your style of real estate is actually getting closer to that transaction. Doesn't mean you do any less transactions,
Right.
but you're getting closer to the transaction and closer to the client. And I think it's making people think a little bit more and not being so metallic about real estate.
Yeah, I mean, the transactional model for me is that's no fun. The reason I love this job is that I like to become people's fans. Like I become my client's number one fan. I'm vitally interested in their hobbies, their family. I mean, I really am interested in their progress. I'm
Yeah.
rooting for them. Like probably nobody that they know
Yep.
has the same kind of positive regard for them or fascination with them. And so if I was just trying to, check off more deals, that would be pretty boring, and I wouldn't feel like I was helping. Now, before we say goodbye, two things. I wondered, do you have like a 1 minute story for me? Some little real estate story, something nobody's going to hear any other place about something that happened or a funny thing that you noticed.
The funny that I thought about this. Callista and I spoke about this. Callista's my better half. I read your email that you sent me. And I'm like, oh, it's really that story. I'm like, and again, I am not trying to boast here. I'm not trying to give myself a pat on the back. I've done $7 billion worth of real estate transactions, like over that amount, and been involved in that many because I auction 1,200 properties a year, like in Australia, and
Wow.
like just all these like, and I get to go to those properties. I get to meet the clients. I get to go to these situations, and I'm like, oh, I'm drawing a blank here. But I thought I would actually go back to when I was selling real estate. My funniest story, and again, it's a little taboo, but my very first auction was a brothel, believe it or not. So, and this is me
Like
being naive. Yeah.
legal? Was it legal?
Uh, so it wasn't fully functioning. It wasn't a
Okay.
functional one.
Okay.
It was a building that was used as that, and it got shut down. And
Okay.
it was like a government sale where they're like, there was a legal action here. You need to sell this
I
building.
love it.
And the funny part was, I walked in, and I'm 18, right? I'm 18 years of age. Is that in Australia, you get your real estate license young,
Right.
and I'm 18 years of age, and I'm with the two business owners, and I walk into this property, and it's a sort of like it's a flag lot, so I had to walk down a long driveway, and I'm in this really residential area, like it's a really normal residential area, like think about, I don't know, what's a good example? If anyone knows like Orange County, going to Laguna Niguel, like it's just very vanilla,
Hmm.
and so very standard track home, track home, track home, track home, massive, big, square, Mediterranean, weird property, track home, track home, track home.
Uh-huh.
And I'm walking down this property, this flag lot. I'm like, wow, this is really odd for this area. And it's just in a residential area. So we walk in, and immediately I'm like, okay, there's like a lobby. And Bill, who's the business owner, he's like, yeah, this is kind of strange. I'm like, anyway, open the first door. I'm like, okay, room one. I'm like, oh, that's a small room. Why is there a like a basin? Like there's a sink
Right.
in the room. And I'm like, and he's like, I don't know, maybe it's like a powder room, but there's no toilet. He's
Right.
like, yeah, true. Okay. Next one, room, same thing. Room, same thing. Room, same thing. There was 15 bedrooms in the property,
Oh my
all of
gosh.
which had sinks, but they did not have like actual bathrooms. And we thought, oh wow, this is awful. Somebody's like renting these out, and it's bad. Anyway, long story short, we door knocked the neighborhood, like the neighbors, and like, oh yeah, no, we complained. It was, yeah. I'm like, oh, okay, right. And I for the longest time didn't know what it was, but the worst part about it was on auction day we had 70 registered bidders, right?
7-0.
7-0. The place went crazy. It sold for a ridiculous price. And, and I didn't understand the appeal of it, but people ended up turning it into a residential dwelling, like, and renting the rooms out. But again, it got seized as another brothel, and it was just such an odd situation. Anyway, that's my real estate story.
Your first deal, I love,
First
right?
deal.
Your first auction,
Yep. First auction.
the brothel.
Yeah.
Wow. Well, and look at how far you've come. 7 billion, 7 billion in residential mostly, right?
Yeah.
Real
Correct. It
estate
is pretty
later.
much all. Yep. Yeah, that's right.
Well, thanks for sharing that. I love it. I have a couple of brothel-ish stories to share myself. You just reminded me of a couple that I need to that need to be told because it's just hard to believe sometimes what we see, right? It's
For
hard to
sure.
believe.
San Francisco is a decorative place.
Yes, indeed. So tell us where we can find you.
Well,
Our,
Harcourts Auctions, harcourtsauctions.com. Jump on there. You can grab my information, ben.brady at harcourtsauctions.com. Jump onto our Instagram, Harcourts Auctions, or jump onto our podcast as well, Rethink Real Estate. Cynthia's episode is on there. And we talk about not just auction stuff, we talk about all real estate principles, and we interview successful agents like Cynthia. So, again, easy to find.
okay. Well, I will be. We'll have all this in the show notes too. And thank you again so much, Ben. I really appreciate it.
It's a pleasure being here. Thanks for having me, Cynthia.